With such a quick turnaround between Game Week 24 and 25, as well as the Champions League coming back next week, there's so much to cover. This is the transfer tips video where I talk about the best players to buy, hold, sell and skip, and some players I'll talk about keeping an eye on, and you may have heard some of these names in previous videos, such as the best players for Double Gameweek 26, but enough of all that, let's just jump straight into it and talk about the best players and the best transfer tips available. Up first, we have Mohamed Salah. A lot of people are talking about him ever since his return from the African Cup of Nations. He's been very eager to actually play. Now, at the time of this recording, Liverpool haven't played Leicester yet, so that will obviously give us a very big indication as to whether we should really get him in ahead of Game Week 25. I think Salah's a buy no matter what, but you can hold off another week up until Game Week 26, which is probably what I'll be doing, and bring him in then. What I'm actually looking to do myself, and I talked about this in my team selection videos and the deadline streams, I'm looking to get Bruno Fernandes in and bolster my Double Game Week 25 squad, and then I can offload him for Mohamed Salah, and if not, Heung-min Son's another one that a lot of people will be switching Bruno Fernandes to, and I think that's all fine. Salah though, you have to buy him whether it's now or next week. I don't really think there's much of a difference, and it's a team dependent question, but in most people's cases I think it's best to buy him in Game Week 26, but he's still a buy no matter what, and that's why he's in this video. I don't want to obviously be talking about buying him in Game Week 26 because that's so obvious, and by then a lot of people will be captaining him, and people like myself will probably be putting the triple captaincy on the Egyptian. His stats are absolutely insane. Every time I go through them, I'm just shocked, even though we already know the outcome. I mean, 10 big chances created, 25 big chances, 40 key passes. All of those are great stats. His XG is over 15, by far the best in the league. An XA of almost 8, 65 shots inside the box. These are crazy numbers. 80 shots overall, 38 on target. And the most impressive of all is 16 goals and 10 assists in 20 games. That is absolutely unreal, and he is by far the best FPL asset, so just buy him. He does have that blank in Game Week 27, but that should still be manageable, and you don't need to use a free hit because of that, even if you have triple Liverpool. Just try not to get outfield Arsenal players as well, and have all these Chelsea players, etc. Leicester should have a game in 27 against Burnley, so they shouldn't blank. But the rest of the teams that are blanking, so Arsenal, Liverpool and Chelsea, just try not to go too overboard with them, and that shouldn't be a reason to not go for Salah. You have to have him for Game Week 26 in my opinion, and I think he's just going to be one of the best captaincy options for the season. Hopefully I haven't jinxed him there. The next player on this list is Harry Kane, and Southampton just defeated Spurs 3-2. And that was a bit of a shock result there. Harry Kane didn't score, it was Son instead who did the business, but I still think that Harry Kane is the best striker in the game right now, and that's not saying much because a lot of them are unreliable. Even Edouard, who we all talked about, especially me in recent videos, he didn't even start for Crystal Palace. No such problems will exist for Harry Kane, but is he worth over 12 million? No, he isn't. Son also offers better value for money, but I still think Kane is still worth getting. Maybe in Game Week 26, it's up to you. He's got some good fixtures on the horizon. The double isn't great, but that Burnley game should be good enough despite their recent good form. And Leeds away, Wolves at home, those aren't too bad. And even Everton at home, that's a pretty good fixture. Man United away, I wouldn't really class that as a really difficult fixture for Spurs. But at the same time, you know, both teams are quite similarly matched. I still think Kane can do very well. The stats are decent. They've been improving steadily. And under Conte, he's been very good. And in the FA Cup, he showed his class against Brighton. But at the same time, is he worth over 12 million? I keep on saying this. No, he isn't. Son is better value for money. Would I have Kane at the detriment of not having Salah? Of course not. Salah's the one that you want to have. But I still think Kane is worth it. You don't have to buy him though. And if it's a case of, do I go for Son or Kane? I'll be honest, I would rather go for Son. But some people's team structures, like myself, it actually might be better to go for Harry Kane because going for Son would incur another hit unless you don't bring Salah back in, which is complete nonsense for me. So for some people, it makes sense to go for Kane over Son because it's just easier to go for him. But if it's just a case of one transfer, who can I bring in, Kane or Son? I would go for Son just for that extra value. Yet despite all of these things that I've just said, Kane is one of the best strikers in the game, and if you are in the hunt for a striker, I think you have to go for Kane because there's not really anyone else to choose from. This may seem like a bit of an obvious one, but a few weeks ago I talked about possibly skipping Nuri just because of some of the questions I raised. I do think Nuri is a buy, but just be careful that in Game Week 26 when he has that double, he may not start both games, and also Johnny is now back in training, so quite a lot of developments have happened since the last transfer tips video where I talked about Nuri, but he is a good option long term. I think if you have enough money, go for Cody just for that extra security, and he can play through all these double game weeks potentially. But I think so long as Nuri is available and he's fully fit, I think he's going to start the vast majority of games. But that doesn't mean that there can't be the occasional game where he's rotated with Marçal or Johnny. So that's something to keep an eye on. But so long as Nuri does play, I think he offers the best value in that Wolves defence. And in terms of the creativity and the attacking threat, he is by far the best. In only 11 appearances, he has 3 assists, 5 shots inside the box, an XG of 0.45 and an expected assist of 1.67 with 3 big chances created and 10 key passes. So Nuri for me is one of the best defenders in the game, so long as he can maintain that starting berth. And will he do so? That's another question entirely. I think he'll start the vast majority of games when he's available, but just be careful with Johnny and also Marçal from time to time. We're now onto the hold section, and this might be a bit controversial, but I've gone with Ronaldo as a hold, but this is exclusively for Game Week 25 because he has a double. I've seen some people talk about selling him, and yes, it was very disappointing for him not to start against Burnley, and a bit surprising to a certain extent, but I still think he will score in that double. Let's wait and see if he actually does. It's his longest goal drought since 2010, so that's 5 games in a row where Ronaldo hasn't scored. It's unlike him, but at the same time, you know, there are different factors which actually contribute to this happening. United are just a dysfunctional team. Ronaldo is off form, and also the way he plays nowadays in recent years where he needs service and he's a fox in the box. United don't really have the quality right now to really exploit that and use his abilities to their advantage, even though the players like Sancho, you would expect a bit more. Same with Bruno Fernandes. You would think that Ronaldo would have the service. His stats are a bit similar to Kane. Lower creativity or worse creativity, but the XG roughly the same. 19 appearances, 8 goals, 3 assists. It's pretty poor for Ronaldo, but pretty good for most players in the world. 66 shots with 54 inside the box. I would just keep him for Game Week 26, and despite those 2 good fixtures against Leeds away and Watford at home, in most cases I would sell him, especially if you don't have Salah already, and you could also do a like-for-like swap from Ronaldo to Harry Kane, which is something I'm looking at doing for my own team in Game Week 26. So Ronaldo, don't doubt him too much. I know it's kind of hard to say that because he's been so poor recently, but it's Ronaldo, okay? And United are poor, I get that, but keep him for that double in 25, then look to sell him. If you're in a position where you have to sell Ronaldo to get Bruno Fernandes for Game Week 25, I still would be a bit hesitant about that, despite the fact that I can agree or understand why you would do so. But for me, I would hold on to Ronaldo for 1 more week. If you don't have him, definitely don't get him in. I just don't think it's worth it for that 1 week. And even then, it's risky. I know a lot of people will disagree with this, but I think Ronaldo's a hold for 1 more week. Then it will be time to sell heading into Game Week 26. Next up on this list is Reguilon, but I'll be honest, the next 2 players I'm talking about holding are pretty much, I'm kind of got my doubts about them. And even Ronaldo, he is just a hold for Game Week 25. So all of these holds aren't really long-term holds, if you know what I mean. So with Reguilon, because he has that double in 26, I've seen some people going from Reguilon to Davis or maybe Reguilon to Digne because of that double and also that Wolves fixture, which is okay, I guess, at least from a defensive perspective, and Leeds away. And even Everton at home, you could keep Reguilon for those fixtures and then sell even after Game Week 26. In 27, that's also another opportunity to sell, but at the same time, you might be struggling to field in 11 because of the Liverpool players and all these blanks that are happening, so bear that in mind. But for the time being, I think he's a hold, but I think the time for Spurs defenders, especially around this price, is probably over. Conte had that really good run of fixtures when he first came in. Those are over, and even against Southampton they conceded 3 goals. I think that could happen from time to time, even though Spurs have one of the better defences in the league. But just expect a little decline in their defensive numbers, the amount of clean sheets, and even Reguilon's attacking threat. Despite that though, I'd hold him at least for the next 2 game weeks or so, then look to get rid. But it's a bit of a difficult one with most of these players in terms of holding, because a lot of them, they've shown some quality in the past and they have shown some signs that they could be good in the coming weeks, but there's just so many options to choose from in defence that around Game Week 28, when everything's kind of normal and we've got fewer blanks and the double game weeks are a bit more manageable potentially, that's when Reguilon could be offloaded. Once again, this is a player I'm not too sure of in terms of holding, but there's just not that many strikers to choose from. You could maybe go to Workhorse, who I've been talking about even in the best double game week 26 players. He was very impressive against Watford and even against United where he got an assist. So he's definitely showing some signs of quick adaptation to the Premier League. And there's also Edouard. I still believe in him despite his benching against Norwich, which was very disappointing. With Ollie Watkins, he's been very poor. And in FPL, there's something about Watkins where he has okay stats sometimes. They could even be very good from time to time, but he just never really delivers. I always talk about this. Watkins is featured in quite a few of these transfer tips videos, and if you don't have him, I wouldn't bring him in. But at the same time, if you have him, I maybe would hold. If it's a case of you having Watkins and Antonio, then perhaps I would sell Antonio. But that's something I was a bit torn about in recent streams and videos. I think it's very difficult to judge. But those fixtures for Aston Villa, as well as all the unscheduled fixtures, so there's plenty of games in hand, those would push me towards keeping Ollie Watkins. And there's not too many to choose from up front. You have Harry Kane and Edouard, who are standouts. The rest is kind of hit and miss. Workhorse could be another one, maybe Broja. But so many are off form, and there's no real consistent striker from start to finish in FPL this season. The stats are okay: an XG of over 6, an XA over 2, 9 big chances, 39 shots with 36 inside the box. These are pretty decent for a medium price striker. Nothing special if you compare them to someone like Antonio, who we'll talk about later. But Watkins is a hold, although I'll admit I'm a bit skeptical about this one. Well, I said I'd talk about him later. Right now, here we go. Antonio. And as you can see, there's a clear difference in stats compared to Ollie Watkins, but a lot of these were at the beginning of the season. Antonio has been pretty lackluster in recent weeks, and that is demonstrated by the stats. 6 big chances created and 14 big chances, very good numbers. His XG is almost 9, his XA is over 5, 8 goals and 7 assists is still a very good return in 23 appearances for someone who started at 7.5 million this season. 57 shots overall, 20 on target, which is a bit low maybe, 46 shots inside the box, but these numbers have all drastically decreased in the last 10 game weeks, and since game week 5, Bowen has become the main West Ham attacker. He's the only one you really want to get right now, but before that, it was all about Benrahma and Antonio. We remember that combination very well, and the fixtures are very good, so it's difficult to say you have to sell Antonio. Even that Leicester fixture, they're so poor defensively, the Foxes, that I think that Antonio could do very well. The same goes for any West Ham asset, but the returns have been so poor recently, and I think Bowen's enough to cover West Ham. You can also go to Edouard, maybe Workhorse or Harry Kane. There's not many options up front, but at the same time, you could also consider downgrading to someone like Broja and increasing the amount of money you spend in your midfield, which is where all the goals and the points seem to be at. So Antonio, for me, is a sell. Bernardo Silva is a bit similar to Antonio in terms of having a very good start to the season but then tailing off massively. I'd still rather keep Antonio over Bernardo Silva though. Bernardo's just not getting any attack in return whatsoever. 7 goals and 4 assists is still decent in 22 games. That's pretty much 1 goal contribution per 2 appearances. 27 shots, 25 inside the box. The XG and XA are quite similar, but all of these stats, they always pointed towards unsustainability. I brought him in anyway. I think he got me 1 return or 2, and then he tailed off massively. I was happy to sell him quite a while back, and I think anyone who does have him should sell him, despite the fact they plays Norwich away next. City should win that game quite comfortably, but Norwich have improved recently, as demonstrated in their draw against Crystal Palace and some very good results recently, like a comprehensive win against Watford. But despite that Norwich fixture, I would still sell him now. You could sell him to Coutinho, maybe a double gameweek player. I would consider that heavily, despite that very good fixture. So for me, Bernardo Silva, sell him. I'm very clear about that one. One player that I'm a bit more convinced about actually of selling than even Bernardo Silva is Matthew Lowton. He's lost his place and I just don't think he's going to get it back, because since he's been out of the team, Burnley have been keeping clean sheets, and even against United they only conceded that 1 goal. Lowton has okay stats, 1 goal and 3 assists in 17 appearances, an expected assist of 1.85. I think that those who brought in Lowton ahead of that double game week for Burnley are very unlucky. I was actually very close to taking an additional hit for Lowton, and that would have actually been so poor if I ended up doing that. Burnley got the clean sheet against Arsenal that week and Lowton didn't feature, and ever since it's just been very poor for Lowton. The thing is though, if you have enough squad depth, you can just not prioritise this sale just yet. But if you do have that spare transfer to make, and Lowton is pretty much the kind of favourite or the definite standout to sell, then just sell him, get rid of him. You could go for a Wolves defender. I think that would be quite a sensible switch. And even Livramento might offer you better value for money from now on. But at the same time with Lowton, I thought he would actually be a pretty decent player as your kind of 5th defender, and your Burnley coverage there for the double game weeks. There could be one in game week 27 against Leicester. So when they play Crystal Palace, they could also face Leicester. That'll be 2 double game weeks in a row. But Lowton, he's just lost his place in the team, and for me, that's not good enough, even if he doesn't cost that much. So Lowton is a sell, and it is a shame because I think he could have been a pretty decent double game week player as he showed in the last campaign. We're in the final section now of the video, the skip section. If you haven't got Diogo Dallo up to this point, I would skip him completely. David De Gea is more than enough cover for Manchester United defensively because they're just atrocious at the back. Even going forward, you could argue, but I definitely would rather go for Bruno Fernandes and even Ronaldo over having a double up in United defence. If you don't have any United coverage whatsoever, then you could maybe consider Dallo, but I just don't think it's worth it because what if Wan-Bissaka comes in for one of those 2 games? That is possible, even though Dallo is first choice at the moment. And Leeds away, Watford at home are also good fixtures afterwards, but do you really trust United to keep clean sheets in those? Probably not, and I just think around the same price, you can even go for Ben Davies, a Wolves defender, and a few others that I just don't think it's worth it. His stats across the season are pretty poor actually. 6 shots overall, 3 in the box, an XG of 0.37, an XA of 0.43, 0 big chances, no big chances created, and 9 key passes. The stats are pretty horrendous, and I just don't think he's worth it. He can get the bonus points occasionally because of the tackles and other factors, but for me, Diogo Dallo is worth skipping. If you do have him though, hold him. Otherwise, just do not go for him. I talked about Tierney being one of the best players from Arsenal you can get, targeting that double game week in 26, but the reason I'm talking about skipping is the fact that he has 2 blanks in the next 3 game weeks. That's just not good enough for me. You can buy him from game week 28 onwards. That's when he could be very good, and Arsenal could have a double in 28 facing Watford and Chelsea. Not the greatest double in the world, but still a double nonetheless. Tierney, as opposed to Dallo, is actually much better offensively, but at the same time, maybe his attacking potential is a bit overstated. He's no Robertson, he's no Trent Alexander-Arnold or Joao Cancelo, but Tierney is a solid defender and he could offer you pretty good value. In my opinion, Ramsdale is the best Arsenal coverage defensively. He just offers the best value with the saves and the bonus points. Tierney can get you that occasionally with the bonus and odd assist here and there. He's got 1 goal and 3 assists this season, but 0 big chances and 0 big chances created. I just don't really think his attacking returns are that sustainable, and they're nowhere near the others. Even Luca Digne around the same price, although he has also had a pretty lackluster season up until this point. So Tierney, I like him as a player. I think he's maybe worth buying from game week 28 onwards, but with 2 blanks in the next 3, is it really worth going for him when he has 1 double in 26? Not in my opinion. I think I would skip him. There's better options to buy right now, but in game week 28, I would consider the Scotsman. And lastly, we have Demarai Gray, and really this segment is dedicated to just saying, do not go for any Everton players right now. Wait for some signs of progress. It doesn't really have to be in terms of results, but even just the stats, the underlying numbers and the eye test, and then we can consider them. Demarai Gray actually came off early against Newcastle. He picked up a hip injury and was replaced by Dele Alli. His stats across the season are nothing special, and he is a budget midfielder after all, but even Michael Olise or Martinelli would be better options around the same price. The fixtures aren't great. Leeds at home is pretty decent. Southampton away isn't too bad. But then City at home, Tottenham away and Wolves at home, nothing special there. And also, I would be waiting for these Everton players potentially for their doubles later on in the season. But right now, I wouldn't go anywhere near them. I still have Demarai Gray. I just sold Dominic Calvert-Lewin for a hit to Edouard, so I didn't really make anything out of that. I actually lost points from it. But looking at Demarai Gray, I would skip him and all these Everton players. I wouldn't be looking to buy any of them right now. Maybe consider them when they have some doubles later on in the season and also some pretty good fixtures, but they're still poor. Lampard can get a reaction out of them like he did in the FA Cup, but I think it will take a bit of time before that happens in the Premier League, especially against top quality opposition. And perhaps someone like Richarlison or even Gray, if he returns, could do very well against Leeds and Southampton. The same goes for Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but definitely avoid their defenders. They're so shocking at the back, and going forward, they can score the odd goal, but they're not really consistent enough to really go for them. And there's so much to choose from in midfield that Demarai Gray for me is just an afterthought. So skip Everton, skip Demarai Gray, just skip all of them. And that concludes this video. We've talked about 12 players, free to buy, hold, sell and skip as always. There's also a few players to keep an eye on like Workhorst. Pretty encouraging performances despite the fact he hasn't really had any big chances himself, but once he gets that service, he could actually be right at the top of the pile of the strikers. Which ones would you go for right now up front? Because there's not much to choose from, frankly. I would probably say Harry Kane, Edouard and possibly Workhorst, if not maybe Dennis because of the doubles, but it's just not much to choose from up front. That's kind of the position where all season we haven't had someone who's been very good from game week 1 all the way to this point. But thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. We're almost at 10,000 subscribers, so any sort of support would be massively appreciated. Good luck with Game Week 25 and also the rest of the season. Also Game Week 24, because there's still a few games at the time of this recording that are yet to be played. And also UCL Fantasy. If you haven't already, check out my UCL Fantasy content. There's also a team selection video for that that's come out recently, so check that out. And you can also become a channel member by clicking the join button, and you have a list of all the different membership tiers in the description below with all the perks. If you become a legend, you can actually have exclusive early access to all of my videos, and you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM. All the very best of luck. Enjoy the football, that's the most important thing, and I'll see you next time.